Good morning, sirs, all the men and women of God in the house, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this august occasion. It's foundational in many ways because as Christians, we sometimes shy away from taking major steps that will not necessarily be popular at the point in action, but that will be transformational eventually. We're very collaborative and we like everybody to be happy. And because of that, the hard decisions, the church is very reluctant to take the hard decisions. For me as a Christian and as a business person, I always struggle with it. I struggle in church when I see people being rubbed on the head when they need to be given a whip. When I see, how kind and nice pastors are to people that actually deserve tongue lashing. Or when I see things that we really need to call a spade in order for us to survive. And I think in many ways, this is one of those moments. I decided I'm not going to use lies because I know as for Leke and our super tax accountants, you will get enough of it. So I just thought, I'm going to take the approach of laying a foundation and let them build on that. My assignment is to talk about the church as a model of integrity. And I'm going to read a few scriptures just to understand that we're not talking off the top of our head. And we're not acting as two knows or over sabi in terms of this. It's a matter of we either make the move at the right time or the church will find itself in a lot of trouble. The reality is it's a changing environment. There are conversations in many places that a lot of people don't get into. There's a wind of change that came and was managed, but will come again. And reality is, if you're a smart business person, one of the things you do in the country is you follow the trend of policy conversation. And as you hear the trend of policy conversation, you are proactive in advance of its activation. So that when it does come, you are prepared as a house and you have taken certain decisions that will make you able to survive it. The church needs to be pragmatic and needs to think through the way it operates in a way that we can stand in many ways. And one of the biggest part for me is, look at the number of churches in this country. Imagine the number of people who go to church. The biggest house of influence in our nation is the church. That is the truth. And if there is a place where people believe and take literally most things that their leadership says, it's the church. Which means that we shape the mind and the thinking of society in many ways. The things we do right will affect how a congregation lives their lives and tend to do those things right. The things we do wrong and say is right, they will also assume that it is right. And they will go out and practice it. And as a business person, I can tell you, the reason a lot of Christian businesses are small, are unstructured, have not advanced to own spaces where they control the territories and the segments of the market is because there's an acceptance of mediocrity in many ways. And it stems from the perception of how the church in itself is structured. If you employ church people without being diligent enough to find the right qualified, competent, capable ones with the right character to stand, and you use their faith test as your test of taking people in, too many people have too many stories. That should make us think, what kind of people are we breeding out of church? But what is the example that they're following? It's how we structure the environment where they're nurtured. And so these are realities. We're going to have some hard conversation with ourselves. I'd rather we have a family meeting and have hard conversations than that outsiders come and tell us. At the point they're telling us, they won't be telling us nicely. If they tell us with the whip of the law, we will already be in trouble. So we need to do some of what this represents because it's important for our future as a people of God and as representing Christ. Okay, so I'll just read a few scriptures that at least lays the foundation that, look, this is not just that Pastor Sam and a few people decided they want to be the show-off guys that know how to do things right. It's because some people need to step up and make us think right about how things should be done. And it's supported by the Bible. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So if we're serving God and we're ambassadors of God, of Christ, we're going to have to represent him right and not anyhow. Proverbs 20:21, so you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. In uprightness and in our integrity, we must manifest how we do things. Integrity represents right application of law, following that which is right, and doing what is right, right. I will sing of steadfast love and justice. Psalm 101, 1-2. And justice to you, O Lord. I will make music. I will ponder the way that is blameless. Oh, when will you come to me? Will walk with integrity of heart within my house. Proverbs 28:18. Whoever walks in integrity will be delivered, but he who is crooked in his ways will suddenly fall. And Job 2:23. I know I'm talking to a lot of ministers, so you know all these scriptures, but just for emphasis is why I'm reading them out. Job was God's show of peace. And as Christians, we're meant to be a show of peace. And in reality, even with everything that Job had suffered, what God really was saying here, and the Lord said to Satan, Job 2:3, have you considered my servant Job, that there's none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. He still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without reason. When we follow the law of the land, we're moving away from evil. And being Christians or being church does not exempt us from the laws of the land. We must do what is right by the law and biblically. We must be compliant citizens of the nation. Whoever walks, Proverbs 10:9. Now I'm trying to do this quickly. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely. But he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. If you walk in integrity, you have nothing to fear. Let any wind come, you will stand and you will fight it. If the church is structured right, working right, its books are right, if government sends auditors from anywhere to come in, you will show them. Why? You have nothing to fear. If they challenge you, you will challenge them. If someone says, we're going to take you to court, you will follow them. Why? Because you're standing right. You will have the courage to stand and to fight. But if we don't do what we should do, we will be afraid. We will be vulnerable. And we will be weak. And we will be embarrassed. And we will be ashamed. Let me tell you, yesterday, I had a conversation with a senior man of God. And I went to him and said, look, there's trouble coming. It's not about finance or governance, but it's about governance of the body. And because there are certain moral decadence in the body that is showing up now, we're in troubled times, and we have an army of people ready to take on the church. This is the truth. Because in the last week or two, there were groups of people who called me and kept saying, look, We're just giving you a head start. You need to talk to some of your people. We're going to fight and fight with everything for justice. And these are the facts that we have. But part of why we're fighting is that the body has not acted or responded as a structured body that can manage its own. And you know, if you have a structured fight in a ring, there's a referee. If you punch a man where you shouldn't, the referee will step in. If you have rougher fight, it will scatter in every direction. No, this is the truth. If we don't have structures that will allow us to respond, we will only have rougher fights. And the bottom line is, if we stand for Christ, we already have the devil as an enemy. And anyhow, the body is living on a stage and it can be attacked. But when you organize your house and you stand, whether you as a church or the body of Christ, the individuals within the church, imagine if key people within the church, the ministries or the organizations they represent are put to shame. It's all of us. As Yoruba people say, whatever happens to the eye, there's no way your nose and your eye will not suffer together. Sorry, my notes are on my phone, and my phone, people are trying to call me like crazy. So they're distracting me. Proverbs 28:6. Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. Let me stop. We as a church are meant to be a model of influence. Why? The way we do things affects the lives of the people who come to us willingly and are committed into our hands as a church. We speak into their lives consistently, at least every Sunday. They listen to the tapes of our teachings. They take examples from church. They see the structures we have in church. My son asked me a question yesterday. And, you know, some of these battles we have to fight in our homes, no matter how righteous you are. My son asked me, said, "Mommy, and don't give me Nigerian answer." I said, "Okay." Said, "I went to a restaurant to eat with some people. And I saw certain kinds of cars outside." He said, "Mommy, I know the car. It's 2019 model. This is how much it cost." And then I saw an army of guys in black suits outside, standing around my place. And when we went in, I saw certain leaders of the church. And I said to myself, no, it couldn't be them that brought those cars. And those multitude of people in black suits that I saw outside cannot be there just because of them. How do you answer? Because my natural instinct is to protect the church. But my responsibility as a parent is to have an honest conversation with my son. And if I have brought him up in a Christian way and I'm still nurturing him as a young man to stand in it, and he throws smart questions at me, how do I answer truthfully and not be ashamed? In reality, our congregation is changing. They are not the just follow and compliant people anymore. They're educated, they're knowledgeable, they're inquisitive, they want to know. Whether it's our children or the people who come to church, they're empowered in their mind and in their thinking. And we must be able to defend the house. And that requires that we are structured right. The people who work for you in church, some of them, they're making it their career. But can they trust the house that they've given their life to? It's the system and the testimonies and the influences that we're creating by how we are structured as a body. How can we rise up in the nation and challenge an act of government or leadership if we ourselves are not standing right? Because you can speak when you're confident that you yourself, you have nothing to hide. It's time to ask ourselves, are we really the light upon the hill? Are we that fragrance that we were meant to be? We're meant to walk into a place and cause change, influenced by our character, influenced by our actions, influenced by our words. And the place where we prepare our people to be the biggest influencers is from our pulpit. But more than what we say is how they see us, organize ourselves, and behave. It affects how they then go to their business to structure and do things. Think of it. In this secular nation by law, Nigeria is a secular state. It's not a Christian or Islamic state. But the population of Christians, for argument's sake, let's say it's 50-50. 50% Muslims, 50% Christians. So that we don't even try to do any maths. Imagine if 50% of this nation, do you know what that means? 1 out of every 2. 1 out of every 2 human beings in this nation is standing right, taught right, with the right examples, influenced rightly from our pulpits and from our leadership, from the church. Going into their businesses and into their career and their life with the right value system and the right example from where they're coming from, or where they're submitted to be taught on a regular daily basis. Because it's not just when they come to church, they listen to your tapes, they listen to podcasts, they do this. Every decision they need to make, they go to their pastor for counsel and advice. You will die when you listen to some counsel. We either self-regulate because we have wisdom, or we will be regulated. The challenge is we're too many, we're too obvious, we're too flamboyant to be ignored for too long. That is the truth. Really, industries become regulated as they grow in size and power. The reality is the church has immense power in this country. That is the truth. The church, by sheer numbers, has immense power. And once you have that kind of power in any nation, if you do not regulate yourself for good and for development and compliance with the law and the financial part, because there's always attraction to the money, the first thing they will attack is the base of your power. The money you have to exhibit the power and the people that gather to you. Because if you have manpower and you have financial power, you can cause trouble in the land. I think we underestimate the power of influence that we ourselves have. And therefore, we have not harnessed it rightfully for positive impact in a format that we can have a collective voice that will cause change. Nigeria has no reason finding itself where we are If the church and the people are standing right, moving right, thinking right, and influencing their environment right. Think of every office that you work. How many people there, if you say, how many of you are born again, will put up their hands? Which church do you go to? By the time they finish. The other day, Pastor Sam and I had a meeting at First Bank. It was good to see a star on display. Because from the reception of the head office, they kept him. He couldn't get inside the building for a long time because everybody wanted him to pray for them. It's true. By the time he finally got through the lift and we finished our meeting and I was seeing him off back downstairs, we spent a lot of time waiting for everybody that wanted to come and greet Pastor Sam and for him to pray on the street of Marina. What does that tell you? The power of influence and a voice. But a recognized voice. Imagine if that power is used for any other thing other than good. How do you think cults are formed? Because people are drawn to the influence of one person who has an ideology that you look at it as an outsider and you're thinking, are these guys, how can you even believe this rubbish? But it tells you, little at a time, how you can control the mind and the hearts of men. And as a church, we have that power. So we must have governance and financial accountability principles and guidelines that runs across the body. So that when we know that you're doing right, if there's a move against you, the church can rise in your support. Why? Because we already know that collectively we have moved to do things right. Even within your own church, you can present, as my pastor always says, I serve under Pastor Taiwo Odukoya. I don't sign the check of the church. I don't know anything about the money of the church. There are those who do it every day. And they're the leadership who are accountable for it. It's to protect the institution and to protect the individual. You know, Pastor Sam said most churches cannot afford accountants. Play it back to small and medium-sized businesses. Most of them on their own cannot afford a lot of those professional services. But there are services that exist to serve them in multiples. There are service companies who audit, do the accounting, and file records for small businesses. They probably have 50 businesses on their books. And they go once a month and all of that. More than anybody else, churches even have free service. Most of you have accountants within your church who offer their time for free. So we get a lot of free labor. And sometimes the best of the best go to your church. And they will do what you need. But do you have the clearness of conscience to allow them into your books? Because if you have nothing to hide, then it's not a problem that a professional in church who can offer the service helps to get the book set. That the lawyers within the church help you to have the right legal opinion and follow the law. In organizations, the number of staff we need to have just for compliance purposes. You are bigger organizations than many companies. The turnover in some churches are far more than the turnover in many companies. The manpower that drives your church in terms of congregation and staff, for some, is bigger than some multinational corporations. We're not going to get away with it for too long. Before it becomes a deliberate attack And it would not be an attack. It would be the government trying to regulate bodies that affects the lives of people. Let's be honest. We can interpret everything spiritually from our own perspective. But in reality, if you are a reasonable, sensible government and a large chunk of your population is invested in certain parts of the system, you're going to be interested in what is going on, especially because of some of the things that we do. What we do affects the lives of our people. What we do affects the society. What we do affects how we build a nation. What we do affects how our people build their own opportunities, either in their careers or in their businesses. We're a major influencer in the society, and we have a responsibility to influence right. And when the church sets itself up as a model of integrity with a clear conscience, we will see that we start the process of a society that is transformed ethically, righteously, morally, and legally. And more of our people will become accountable and will do things right. And will have a better chance to build a better nation. I know some of what will be said today might seem hard, and change is tough. People resist change. But it's better that you manage your own change yourself at your pace than that change is forced on you. Financial Reporting Council hasn't gone anywhere. The guy who was at the head of it was the only one that was removed. It has a different DG and has a different chairman of the board, and they're working. So don't go to sleep. Otherwise, you'll be woken up suddenly. It's true. Because once it's been introduced, it wouldn't be scrapped. It will be reorganized. They will discuss. They will revamp in order to remove some of the major conflicting areas. But regulation is coming, and we better be prepared. Thank you.